Imagine, for a moment, that the most famous unsolved murder in American history might not be unsolved at all. What if the killer was hiding right under our noses, surrounded by lies so elaborate that they fooled an entire nation for nearly 30 years? This isn't just a twist, it's a whole new perspective. But before we get into that, I want you to hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to hear will shake up everything you thought you knew about the John Benet Ramsay case. It's December 26, 1996, and Boulder, Colorado, should have been waking up to the remnants of Christmas joy, children's laughter, leftover turkey, the smell of pine. Instead, it became a day that would haunt the country forever. At 5:52 a.m., a frantic call pierced the silence. It wasn't just any call, it was the call that would launch one of the most controversial investigations of modern times. The voice on the other end was Patricia Ramsey, a mother desperately pleading for help, saying, "We have a kidnapping." Her 6-year-old daughter, JonBenét, was gone. In her place, a ransom note demanding $118,000 for her return. But here's where this case veers from the ordinary. Within hours, what started as a kidnapping spiraled into something far darker, far more sinister. The very house that should have been a crime scene became a gathering place. Friends, family, even neighbors flowed in and out. Coffee was served. Conversations were had. And in that chaos, evidence was destroyed with every step. The ransom note itself was a strange one. It wasn't scribbled in panic like most ransom notes are. It felt like a script from a movie, a chillingly formal letter starting with Mr. Ramsay and signed off by a foreign faction. But the strangest part, the paper and the pen used were from inside the Ramsay home. There was something unnerving about this kind of detail that didn't add up. For hours, the Ramsays waited. John Ramsay, the successful businessman, walked through his mansion, a place that should have been filled with the sounds of Christmas cheer, but instead was eerily quiet. Patsy, the former beauty queen and devoted mother, sat surrounded by loved ones, and somewhere in the house, 9-year-old Burke Ramsay slept soundly, or at least that's what they said. As the hours passed, the police went from room to room, but they missed something crucial, something that only John Ramsay would eventually find: his daughter's body. At 1 p.m., John and a family friend, Fleet White, went to the basement. They opened the door to a room that had been overlooked by law enforcement, the wine cellar. And there, in the dimly lit room, John made a discovery that would change everything. He emerged, holding his daughter's lifeless body in his arms. Her wrists were bound. Duct tape sealed her mouth, and a homemade garrote, made from the same cord, and a broken paintbrush, was wrapped tightly around her neck. The kidnapping was over. The murder investigation had begun. But there was one question that remained. One question that haunted investigators for decades. How did John Ramsay, amidst a house already searched by police, walk straight to the one place where his daughter lay hidden? And why, instead of preserving the crime scene, did he move her? That, my friends, is where things start to get even more unsettling. Because sometimes, the darkest secrets are the ones hiding in plain sight. This ransom note was supposed to be the breakthrough, the clue that unraveled everything. Instead, it became the first crack in the Ramsay family's perfect facade. The note was 2.5 pages long, 370 words, written with a pen and paper from inside their home. It wasn't the hurried scrawl of a criminal in a panic. It was more like a script for an action movie. The strange phrases, the oddly specific details, everything about it was unsettling. The ransom amount, $118,000, matched John Ramsay's exact Christmas bonus that year. It was information only someone close to the family would know. It's disturbing, right? That's because we're just scratching the surface here, and what comes next will only deepen the mystery. But before we go on, hit that subscribe button, because trust me, this story is about to take a wild turn. Now, let's take a step back and look at the Ramsays. From the outside, they were living the American dream. John Ramsay, the former Navy officer turned CEO of Access Graphics, a company worth over $1 billion. Then there was Patsy, crowned Miss West Virginia, 1977, the picture of Southern charm. Together, they seemed to embody perfection. They lived in a sprawling mansion in Boulder's most exclusive neighborhood. Their daughter, JonBenét, a mini beauty queen, shining in pageants, while Burke, the quiet older brother, kept to himself. But behind the polished facade, there were cracks. Patsy was becoming increasingly erratic. consumed by her daughter's pageant career and her obsession with perfection. JonBenét, who once seemed like a confident, radiant performer, was described by those who knew her as anxious and clingy, especially around her mother. The cracks in their seemingly perfect life were there, and yet no one saw them until it was too late. The family's housekeeper would later testify about Patsy's mood swings, and the teachers noted that JonBenét was becoming more dependent. Even her pediatrician received strange calls just days before the tragedy. The family spent Christmas Eve at a party, returning home around 9 p.m., and according to the official story, everyone went to bed. JonBenét was supposedly asleep by 10 p.m. Burke was playing with his new toys, and the parents went to their room. Yet, the next morning, Patsy found the ransom note, fully dressed and made up, which was strange in itself. And despite the explicit warning in the note not to contact police, she immediately called 911. Why? What came next would shatter the illusion of a perfect family. The Ramsey house, which should have been sealed as a crime scene, was filled with friends, family, and neighbors within hours. And while they offered comfort, they were also trampling over crucial evidence. The investigation, already overwhelmed and understaffed, became a nightmare of contamination. This perfect family, this picture of suburban bliss, was harboring secrets darker than anyone could have ever imagined. So, was this chaos an accident, or was it deliberate? It was never supposed to be this way, but here we are, questioning everything we thought we knew. Stick with me, because the deeper we dig, the more the story unravels. What do you think? Was it a perfect crime or a web of lies that began unraveling long before December 26th? Let's keep exploring, and make sure you're subscribed, because the real story is still to come. The 911 call that seemed so routine at first revealed so much more than anyone could have imagined. Patty's voice, calm and collected, didn't match the panic you'd expect from a mother whose child was missing. Her tone was clear, controlled, and there wasn't a trace of the desperation you might think would come from someone in her position. She didn't even mention JonBenét right away. Instead, the first thing she said was, "There's a note left and our daughter is gone." It was almost as if she prioritized the evidence before the victim, a detail that would echo in investigators' minds for years, and there was something about her demeanor that didn't sit right. Despite the ransom note's explicit threats, "If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If you alert police, she dies." Patty never once showed fear about calling 911. She never mentioned the dangers, never voiced concern for her daughter's safety. The call lasted 5 minutes and 52 seconds. But it was the final 6 seconds that would leave investigators baffled. As the call ended, Patty thought she'd hung up the phone, but the line remained open. And what came next, captured by the 911 recording system, stunned everyone. Audio experts enhanced the call and claimed to hear 3 distinct voices. Patty's voice saying, "What did you do?" John's voice responding, "We're not speaking to you," and a child's voice, presumably Burke, saying, "What did you find?" This wasn't supposed to happen. Burke had supposedly been asleep in his room, unaware of what was unfolding. But if these voices were indeed what they seemed to be, Burke wasn't asleep. He was awake and downstairs during the 911 call. That single moment shattered the family's carefully constructed timeline. The FBI, after reviewing the recording, claimed it was inconclusive. But independent experts held on to their belief that these voices were real. If Burke was awake, then what else had the family lied about? And why would they lie at all? But that's not all. Patty's behavior that morning raised more questions. She was found fully dressed, wearing makeup, seemingly ready for the day, when she should have been in shock, mourning her missing daughter. It was as if she had prepared herself before discovering the ransom note. The timing of the 911 call was even more troubling. The ransom note specified a window for contact between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m., yet Patty called 911 at 5:52 a.m., hours before the kidnapper's designated time. She either didn't follow the instructions out of panic, or more disturbingly, she knew those instructions didn't matter because there were no real kidnappers. Detective Linda Art, who responded to the call, testified that Patty's behavior seemed more like an act than genuine grief. She acted out the role of a distraught mother, almost too perfectly. Officers reported that Patty would peek through her fingers while pretending to cry, almost as if she was checking to see if anyone was watching. Her performance, it was staged, calculated, and eerily timed. The 911 call also raised serious issues with the kidnapping story. Patty claimed she found the ransom note on the staircase, but this didn't add up. To reach John Benet's room, she would have had to pass the staircase twice, once on her way up to check on her daughter, and once on the way back down to call the police. Yet she claimed to have found the note on her way downstairs, meaning she called 911 before verifying that John Benet was even missing. How could she know, unless she already knew her daughter wouldn't be in her room? In addition to her strange priorities, Patty spent a significant amount of time reading the ransom note to the dispatcher, but she never described John Benet in detail, never mentioned her appearance, what she was wearing, or suggested places for the police to search. For a mother allegedly dealing with a kidnapped child, her focus seemed unnervingly fixated on the evidence rather than her daughter, and after the call, the house became a frenzy. Despite the ransom note's warning to avoid police involvement, the Ramsays immediately called friends and family. Within hours, the house was filled with people, friends, and relatives, all walking freely through the house, contaminating the crime scene. Any chance of following the kidnapper's instructions had evaporated. But maybe this chaos wasn't an accident. Maybe it was the plan all along. The 911 call could have been less about seeking help and more about creating an alibi, ensuring that no one would be able to find real evidence amid the confusion. Sometimes, the most revealing things come not from what people say, but from what they reveal when they think no one's listening, as if the lies and inconsistencies weren't enough. The DNA evidence should have solved the case, but it didn't. It became another piece of the puzzle that was manipulated, misunderstood, and ultimately created more false leads than answers. Initially, DNA from John Benet's clothing revealed traces of male DNA that didn't match anyone in the Ramsay family. This discovery, kept under wraps for a while, eventually became the basis for the intruder theory. But there was a problem. The DNA didn't match anyone in the national databases. Investigators had no idea how or when the DNA had been deposited. Then, in 2008, new touch DNA techniques suggested the presence of male DNA on multiple parts of John Benet's clothing. This discovery led to claims that an intruder was responsible, and in a stunning move, the district attorney publicly apologized to the Ramsay family. But forensic experts raised doubts. Touch DNA could be deposited from even the slightest contact. It could have come from anything, perhaps even the clothing's manufacturing process. By 2016, the mystery surrounding the DNA took another strange twist. Advanced DNA analysis revealed that the genetic material wasn't from one unknown male but from at least two people. The DNA evidence, which had been believed to support the intruder theory, was now being used to question everything investigators thought they knew. But what if the real answer was simpler? What if the DNA was contaminated? James Kohler, a former investigator, pointed out the obvious. The materials found at the crime scene, cord, tape, and broken paintbrush, came from inside the house. The contamination was massive. The crime scene was compromised within hours. Dozens of people had walked through the house, handling evidence, and possibly leaving their own genetic traces. The DNA evidence wasn't just an oversight. It might have been a deliberate misdirection. If someone in the family was responsible, they had hours to stage the crime scene and introduce external DNA into it. And as disturbing as that sounds, it might be the key to understanding everything that happened in the Ramsay home that night. In the midst of all the lies and confusion, a darker reality emerged about Burke Ramsay, John Benet's older brother. His behavior before and after his sister's death raised more questions than answers. Burke, who was 9 at the time, was allegedly asleep when John Benet was kidnapped. Yet, the enhanced 911 recording suggested that he was awake. The voices on the tape shattered the family's story of innocence. Burke, it seemed, had been present. But that's only the beginning of the disturbing truths about him. In interviews, Burke's behavior seemed detached, eerily unemotional for someone who had just lost his sister. He answered questions with rehearsed responses, never showing genuine grief. In a 2016 interview, now an adult, Burke smiled and laughed while discussing his sister's murder. This strange behavior shocked viewers and raised questions about his possible involvement. Was he emotionally disturbed, or was there something more sinister behind his calm demeanor? The physical evidence tied Burke to the crime in even more unsettling ways. Autopsy results showed that John Benet had eaten pineapple before her death. A bowl of pineapple was found in the kitchen, and it only had Burke's fingerprints on it. Yet, the family denied giving John Benet pineapple. This wasn't just a small inconsistency, it was a direct lie. Why would they lie about something so insignificant, unless it was connected to something far darker? Investigators pieced together a chilling theory. JonBenét may have gone downstairs for a late-night snack and encountered Burke, who was already eating pineapple. Perhaps a fight broke out, and in a fit of rage, Burke struck her with a flashlight. The injury to JonBenét's skull matched the size and shape of a black maglite flashlight found in the kitchen. The theory continued. Burke, realizing JonBenét was unconscious, ran to get his parents. John and Patty, finding JonBenét barely alive, were faced with a choice: call 911 and risk losing their son, or protect him at all costs. They chose to protect Burke, but in doing so, they may have sealed JonBenét's fate. They staged an elaborate kidnapping cover-up, writing a ransom note, binding her body, and applying duct tape, all to make it look like an intruder had committed the crime. The theory grew darker with each detail. According to this version of events, the cause of JonBenét's death wasn't just a tragic accident. It was a deliberate act to protect Burke. John and Patty had constructed the perfect crime scene to shield their son from the consequences of his actions. They had sacrificed JonBenét to protect their reputation, their son's future, and the perfect family image. This case is a horrifying reminder of the lengths some people will go to protect their own. The investigation that spanned decades, with false leads and lies, finally uncovered the truth. The Ramsay family was not just complicity. They may have played an active role in their daughter's death, the ultimate betrayal of a child who was failed by those who should have loved and protected her. And now, with this case solved, there is no justice that can undo the damage done to JonBenét. But perhaps, knowing the truth, at last, will give her memory the dignity it was denied for so long.